What if you could develop skills to help manage IBS symptoms in only 10 minutes per day? This episode is sponsored by Mahana Therapeutics, which offers the Mahana IBS app. This is a new app that offers evidence-based cognitive behavioral therapy to reduce the severity of IBS symptoms. Until the end of June, this is available at no cost for eligible patients. Get started now and download the app at mahanatx.com/The Gut Show. Welcome back to The Gut Show. This episode is featuring a special guest named Ketan Vakil. He is the founder of Gourmend and also a fellow IBS sufferer. After suffering with stomach issues for the majority of his life, he began the low FODMAP diet. And while it was helpful, it was also easier said than done because he came from a cultural background that enjoyed cooking with flavors and just rich spices and having more enjoyment in the kitchen. Because there weren't a lot of options for low FODMAP flavor alternatives, he began to create his own. And that's where they began to develop the signature spices of garlic chive powder, garlic skate powder, and green onion powder, as well as their signature chicken broth. So enjoy today's episode as we talk more about his story, why he started Gourmend, and really why he chose the certain ingredients that he did, the quality that they honor at Gourmend, and what this means for those who are living with IBS and doing the low FODMAP diet, as well as what's coming next and what he would hope to see happen in the low FODMAP world in the future. Hey, Ketan, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you on. And I want to just go ahead and get started by jumping into your story, because you now have a low FODMAP food company. So what happened in life to get you to where you decided to start Gourmend?
What happened? Where to begin? So I've had a lot of stomach problems probably since, I don't know, early teens. Had seen, my father was a doctor. I had seen doctors and he was friends with gastroenterologists, never really figured out what it was, was in college and again, saw more and more doctors. Everyone wanted to run colonoscopies and random antibiotics. And there was never really an answer at the end of the day. I just sort of was like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to just live with this. I think it's just like similar to everybody's story. Oh, it's stress or it's this or it's that. But I knew it wasn't that. And for a time, I thought it was butter that I was, and it's clearly not. I thought I was allergic to butter and dairy, and yeah, maybe that's part of it, but clearly lactose is not a problem with butter. So in any case, I think I'd come across some research one day on the web, just randomly, about hydrogen breath tests someone had taken, and they'd drawn the charts about the different pieces that were going up in the chart. And I said, oh, that would be an interesting test to run. I live in New York City, and I was looking around for somebody that would do it, and it turned out Mount Sinai here offered that test. I had to go and ask them to do it, and I was in this dark room in the back. It was probably, I don't know, 8 years ago now, and finally I know that test is proven maybe to not be so accurate in modern times, but it certainly shed some light for me. And after I had that test, then I was able to meet with the right dietitian over there that really helped me. And they had hired a younger gastroenterologist who had a little more training in this. And finally, we started to work through it and realized clearly it was a FODMAP issue for me. And and so then I was like, I live in New York. We have great farmers markets. I like to cook. I was like, yeah, it's annoying. I love garlic. I love onion. I'm half Indian, so there's a lot of that in the cooking. So I'm like, that's kind of a bummer, but I came to learn now that many of us know the tops of scallions, garlic scapes, leek tops. There's lots of stuff that tastes similar in flavor that you can get. And here in the spring, I look forward to it because we get some really awesome stuff from the farms around here. It's not the scallions getting in the grocery store, but these massive green ones. And I was freezing stuff down and saving it for the winter. And geez, I really should try to turn these into products for other people. And I sat on it for a really long time. And then finally decided I'm going to do it. So finally in 2020, we got, the first product out. And so we're slowly trying to get some more stuff out that's, unique like that, because in big cities you can get some of this stuff, but I think in some parts of the country it's hard, and we want to try to, I don't know, source this stuff, preserve it well, treat it with respect, and create some neat stuff out of it. So that's what we're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always like asking founders of companies in the IBS and like low FODMAP space more of their stories, because it is usually the same. Like no one really gets into low FODMAP just to
Yeah.
make a lot of money, or
No.
it is to fulfill a need, which is a great, we have a lot of needs in our community, but it's typically from this personal need or a familial need, or something like that that gets things started. And I feel like the most valuable products out there are started that way, because they're started with the person that's going to use it in mind, not just, oh yeah, let's make this because
Yeah.
it's, a hot topic now, or whatever.
Yeah.
So what's your background? Are you in the food production background at all, or?
No, so that's a good
Okay.
thing. No, this has definitely been a labor of love since the beginning. My background is not in food, besides loving to eat it. I have more of a digital marketing background. I've
Okay.
worked in agencies, startups, American Express for a while. So that's more my background, but that's helped with this business to help get the word out through certain digital channels, and that's really helped us out. But no, I've had to learn a lot about food manufacturing and supply chain and that sort of stuff along the way.
Yeah.
Still learning every day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I know that there's so much more behind the scenes that you don't see. And for Gourmend specifically, whenever you did decide, okay, I'm going to go in this route, like what did that look like at the start to take the scallions and turn them into a powder? Like, how did you kind
Yeah.
of get to the place of, okay, I see this need, now I'm going to create a product? Like, what did that actually look like?
It was crazy. So I knew originally that garlic scapes don't taste exactly like garlic. They're a little bit grassier, a little bit more sweeter. But I thought in my mind that was like the first idea I had. Like that is close enough to garlic, and it's 100% natural. It's a really cool product. I wanted to do that. And then I thought you need garlic for cooking. And then broth was the other one. I'm like, pretty much everything you make requires at least a chicken broth, if not other sorts of flavors. And so I knew that had to be like a lead product as well. And so as it turns out, it's two totally different worlds of people that can help you make those things. So it was a lot of false starts. It took about a year actually to find the right manufacturing partners that would play ball. It turned out it's not that hard to source the ingredient. So we buy garlic scapes. I'll try to take them in two parts because there's different stories, but we source garlic scapes from organic farms. It's like, okay, what do you do with them now? You can't just send them to a place to be turned into a powder. We had to I wanted to freeze dry them because it locks in all the flavor. So you have to actually freeze them first. So we had to find a partner that would freeze them. Then they get freeze dried. No one wants to work with you unless you're doing like 1 million pounds, which we're not doing. So it took a long time to find someone willing to take a bet on us and do small volumes to start. So that product goes through 3 steps: freezing, freeze drying, and eventually powdering and bottling. So it took about a year to find the right pieces. And you thought you might have it, and then, oh, just kidding, we don't deal with glass, so we can't pack. I really wanted glass for environmental reasons. And or no, we can't freeze dry that for you because it's a garlic sort of product, and we also freeze dry apples, and it'll ruin the other stuff we're doing in the factory, so we're not going to touch garlic. So it's some weird stuff like that. So it took a while to find the people that would help us out. On the broth side, again, not that hard to find the ingredients, but finding somebody who's willing to take the scallions that come in and cut them, cut the bottoms off, the leeks, cut them off. You can't buy, most manufacturers want to buy frozen product off the shelf. They just throw in the tanks, and most broths aren't even made that way. But you can't buy it that way. So we had to find someone willing to do that. And they only do that for us. They don't do that for any of their other customers. Literally, I did it with them the first time we ran it. We cut all the stuff off. All the stuff goes in the tank. It's our formula, and it's made custom for us, which is awesome. Most commercial stuff, it's just really off the shelf, like powders and fillers and stuff. And I'm really happy that we found some great partners that are willing to play ball with us on that stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, that is so nice. And what was that like explaining the goal of garlic scape powder over just using garlic powder, which is already available, or with the broths of communicating to cut that off? Was that something that was pretty well received and understood easily, or did you feel like you had to do a lot of education on why you needed it done a certain way.
There was definitely education along the way. I think actually the broth manufacturer we used, like they usually don't even pick up the phone for people wanting to work on like small volume stuff, but they're like, oh, this sounds really interesting, and they were like kind of jazzed about it. One of the food scientists there was like, they just took the project because it was something different from the norm, and I think that helped. On the spice side, that conversation was, well, it's an ongoing conversation because every time we get a new sort of product in, we have to like teach them, all the staff, how to cut it the right way and all this sort of stuff. But I think now everyone we work with gets it, but we have to keep adding more people to the pie. Like we're working on a vegetable broth, and we're going to need a different partner for that for all sorts of interesting reasons. So so I'll have to keep that conversation going.
It's going to be a big family of people involved in making the products, which is good to think about, because I think as a consumer, especially in the United States, where like I wasn't raised on the methods of like, oh, we make everything from scratch. Like I was raised whenever you bought everything, like you bought the beans already canned. You didn't make them, from scratch. So you don't learn how to soak the beans and cook the beans, or, broths, especially. It's like, I remember learning how to make a vegetable broth for myself with like scraps, basically, as I'm cooking in low FODMAP. And that was such a big thing to make for myself at, 25 years old, that I never thought that I would be able to make. It's just things that like we just never thought about. And it's so easy to just see a product on the shelf, like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to take that product, but not think about like how things are really made, or even where there may be issues of finding things. I think as a low FODMAP person, trying to figure out, well, why do people have to put garlic and onion in everything? And, how hard can it be just to make something without this in it? But when you think about these large scale production pieces, like it is actually a big deal to take an ingredient out.
Because and that's the thing. I really didn't want to just take the ingredient out. I wanted to find ingredients that we could put back in that were similar enough. But you can't just, most spice blends that you go to Whole Foods and get, right? There's just bulk providers of cinnamon or pepper, like whatever it is. I can't go buy garlic chive powder from anybody. We have to actually make it, which is cool. But, that's where, it's a lot of work for a lot of different players. And we do it all here as well. It's United States farms, United States manufacturers, like the whole 9 yards, which I'm proud of. I think it's a good and important thing.
Yeah. Do you get all of your ingredients? Because you do garlic scapes, green onion stems, chives, and then you also use some other ingredients like the leek leaves in the broth. Is that correct?
Yeah. We have it. Yeah, exactly. So on the broth side, everything is bought fresh, so it has to all line up on the same day to come in and be processed, which is cool. Most broths are made just like with frozen stuff or like concentrates, and so we use real stuff. And that's that stuff. And then so our manufacturer will source that from organic farms like near where they produce it, comes in really fresh. And then we personally manage the supply chain for the powders, the seasonings. So we work with 3 farms, one for garlic chives, one for green onion, and like a collective of farms for scapes. Although this season we'll probably do some more cross-pollination because we need more of all of it. Actually, we're toying with green garlic leaves also, which I'm kind of excited about.
I've never tasted a garlic leaf, but that leads me to my next question of, you mentioned there are some differences, right? There's some differences in the way that garlic scapes taste over garlic. There are some differences in how green onion stems really taste, even over like the white part of the green onion. Like they're different. They have different flavor profiles. What was that like developing? Like, did you have to do any development in terms of how things turned into powder and like their flavor profiles, or like what was that part like in bringing these ingredients in? So not just trying to mimic garlic, but also highlight garlic scape. But what did that look like, and what was that process like?
I felt really strongly. I wanted them. We try to be careful in the marketing copy that it's not an exact like duplicate of the thing. It's its own being, and it's a crop. It might taste different when we pick it in May than it does in June. So there is some of this variety, and they're more mild, but they have the same vibe, I think, at the end of the day. And we're trying to teach customers how to use them too. Like, more and more people are learning how to cook through COVID, and it's, what's the right ratio to use, or maybe you should like bloom and heat them in oil or butter before or during the process to bring out some more extra stuff. I would say in the powder side, they're 100% pure. So we're not mixing anything else in there. So it's what we've practiced with is like how much drying you do and what's the right like size to mesh it down. So it is quite powdery because we don't want them to be like flaky. We want it to act like a spice. So we've messed with different things around those things. And this year I'm hoping we'll do some blends. So it's like, okay, if we want to like mix those into like a taco blend or a salt blend or something, okay, well now there'll be a lot of testing there around the right ratios. You know, but like right now they're pure. Like one bottle takes, I don't know, like the green onion powder is like 2 pounds of the green tops to make a little bottle. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's impressive.
You lose, you know, when you dry it, it's like 15-to-1 ratio, 12-to-1 ratio. Yeah.
Yeah. And I found that whenever I'm cooking, and this is what I usually educate my clients on, of whenever we're cooking with alternatives, like the leaves don't taste the same as the bulb, right? They're just not going to have the same flavor profile. So I typically use more, right? I use a lot more of the leaves than I would use of the bulb. Or we don't get a lot of garlic scapes where I am in Tennessee. Like they come up usually as like the leftover part of the crop. Like they're never a main focus. Just where we are, which I think is so funny. I can find them maybe 1 week out of the year at the farmer's market if I'm lucky. And so garlic chives are big, but to me, it takes a lot of chives. And then you use like the whole thing of chives to get like a really garlic flavor. And so that is interesting of like how much you have to condense, but then also thinking about the flavor profiles. And I use the Gourmend blends, and I just throw them in there. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's just like kind of tossing a lot in there, just figure out what I like. And it hasn't gone wrong, which is good. But that is interesting. I never thought about like cooking with them may do a certain thing. Do you guys have like food scientists? Like, is that part of the partners that you have that are helping develop the product for the spices to try to figure out those things? Or is that more just within your own team or just with you in your kitchen?
It's been a mix. I'd say the first few were mainly me. We were working with a food science team on our vegetable broth. I think getting a vegetable broth right, especially most vegetable broths aren't that good just in general, and getting one right that's low FODMAP, and isn't, most of the good ones have like 1,000 milligrams of salt in them. So they're just really good because they're like salt water. So we're trying to make like with our chicken broth, like a unsalted vegetable broth that is like a real deal. And so it's actually, we're close, but it's taken like a year to formulate that. We've done, I don't know, like 14 test runs on it. So it's good having a science team on that. And then every round we've got to test with Monash for the FODMAP level. So that's a lot of time as well for like the lab testing on this stuff. That's another layer, that other food brands that aren't FODMAP worried don't have to deal with,
Yeah. A lot of people don't understand what goes into that. And it's like, it's very specific, which it has to be, right? It has to fit into the qualifications to get that approval. With going into a FODMAP, like a low FODMAP space, there's a need for it, right? The low FODMAP diet it's gaining steam even in the US. I think we're behind a bit from Australia and Canada. Even as a dietitian, like I'm seeing it on the background where low FODMAP is being studied and recommended for more conditions. And, we use it a lot. And so products are finally coming out to make it easier, which is so helpful. But being in like the low FODMAP marketplace, but also being in the bigger marketplace of like food products, like what has that been like? Because that's a pretty competitive market to try to compete with on shelves. So what have you found has worked really well, or things that you've learned just about the marketplace in general?
That's a good question. I'd say it's still early days for us. I think we've, in our first year, a little over a year, we focused mainly on the low FODMAP because it's clearly made for that audience. But we named it Gourmend because it wasn't supposed to only be about FODMAP. It's about gut health, gourmet quality stuff that makes you feel good, and it's really and truly healthy for you. So we're trying to make stuff that anybody who cares about what they're eating, it'll resonate with them. So I think we're going to be exploring retail, I hope, later this year and those types of things. I think that's a major trend in having, yes, it's super competitive, but it's not as competitive for really clean label stuff. Like if you read our labels, there's literally nothing in them that you won't find in your kitchen. And most brands really aren't that way. And I think that's going to start to be, I think people are going to start to become more, certainly a segment of the population really cares about that, but I think it's going to get more and more on trend to be the case. So, time will tell, but my hypothesis is that will help us in that space, but we'll see. So I think I guess the answer, to me, I want to go, it's broader: gut health, really good quality food, low FODMAP or not, because I think it remains to be seen if low FODMAP is going to become, it probably should be. I mean, we should talk about like gluten-free versus, but people think that they're gluten sensitive. It's probably the fructans. And so, I think us and a lot of brands a lot of our like peers are trying to educate people about this, because they're probably, not eating a beautiful sourdough for the wrong reasons and stuff like that. So yeah.
No, I agree. And the way that we're learning so much about how FODMAPs react in the body. And I'm very big on, like, obviously FODMAPs are not bad things. Like FODMAPs are, garlic is great. Garlic isn't a bad ingredient. And not everyone has to avoid garlic forever, and so we don't want to be in like strict low FODMAP forever. But for those that, FODMAPs do actually impact like their gut, how they're digesting. And the more we learn about FODMAPs, the more we learn that really, really high amounts of FODMAPs, like, probably is not the best way to go for most people. Being able to mix it in with other things. And the fact that FODMAPs are so heavily used in sauces and broths and packaged foods, and, they're used everywhere, because that's what we know is that garlic and onion, their flavor, aromatics. And so we use those for flavor base for everything. But if we're eating those all the time, that does cause some issues for some people. And it's not that those are bad, but having alternatives and having options are really important. But then in the low FODMAP space, you're right, there are some, I think the trend is changing, because I do think people who are developing products like you, like, care more about, okay, I don't just want to like make this a low FODMAP product, because there's a difference in like a low FODMAP product that has like a high nutrient quality, and we're replacing the ingredients that were used that had so much nutrition and value with other things that have nutrition and value. It's not just about, let's take onion out and add, a little sugar or extra salt, or, just try to like balance it out that way, which is fine in some ways. But I think it's important to think about, well, if I'm losing the nutrient quality of onion, I really need to find some other nutrient quality that I can incorporate. Like, I don't want to just lose this piece. Like, I want to make sure I'm adding value and the flavor too. And I think that is probably where it will go. So it's interesting to see companies doing that, like you, and, there's some other brands that are doing a good job with that, which is exciting. Educating consumers is hard. One thing that has come up, and something that I notice with clients all the time when they start low FODMAP, is this idea that like low FODMAP alternatives are less than, right? They're not flavorful, they're bland. Even seeing like sensitive stomach, it's like, oh, well, that's not for me. Like, why would I eat that? I see a lot of people who go on low FODMAP and they won't cook the same meals for their family, which is, to me, silly. It's like, like, it's still good food. Like, you can make things that are flavorful and wonderful. And, with products, like, it seems like that could be almost a misconception. Like, is that something that you've run into with educating consumers? Or I don't know if you've had to bring in investors or, anything like that along the way, where there could be some misunderstanding about the quality being less than because it's considered this like low FODMAP alternative.
Yeah, I think there is some of that stigma, and I struggle with it a little bit, actually, with the right pathway. As like, we're probably gonna go through a packaging redesign this year, and thinking about what the right things to put. Like, I don't want us to be a medicinal product, right? It's an awesome, flavorful product that's high end and well made, and it happens to be low FODMAP, right? But it's just got great flavor and all those dimensions we want. So yeah, but I think people do have that, I mean, we try with our educational emails and recipes and stuff to really show, like, your life's not over. Even you can cook, like we cook pretty much most nights around here, and it's the same stuff for the whole family, and it's really good stuff. There's so many options, but you have to, you gotta be willing to learn to cook a little bit. I think that's part of the thing. But yeah,
well, that's where products come into play, and they're so helpful, like spice blends and sauces. It's like, that's such a lifesaver to not have to chop every single.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I've worked from home for a long, like pre-COVID, and I have time to like watch a broth on the stove. But most people don't, that's how we practiced and made this stuff. Most people don't have time for that. And so yeah, it's nice to get some stuff to do that. Yeah.
Today's episode is sponsored by Mahana Therapeutics. Did you know that cognitive behavioral therapy CBT, is an evidence-based option for IBS management. A clinical trial showed that nearly 2 out of 3 patients treated with Mahana IBS reported an improvement in IBS symptom severity. The best part is that this is an easy-to-use app you can do in just 10 minutes per day from the comfort of your phone. Mahana IBS gives you the tools to self-manage symptoms and develop the strategies to live a fuller life with IBS. And until the end of June, Mahana IBS is available at no cost for eligible patients. Get started now and download the app at mahanatx.com/The Gut Show. You can also find this link in show notes. Let's get back to today's episode.
That's interesting about your patients. Yeah, that's because I've debated too, like gut friendly or sensitive formula. I'm not 100% sure what the right thing is, because if you walk by on a shelf, you need to understand the value of it immediately, but it also shouldn't feel like like a less than thing.
Yeah. Or even feel like, someone without IBS or without needing to be on low FODMAP diet, like that they couldn't use it. And I think that it is interesting highlighting certain ingredients like garlic scapes and green onion and green chives, because they're not ingredients that we use daily. Green onion it's a garnish for most people, right? It's not even a flavor profile. People don't even realize what they're doing, or it's a dip with green onion dip, which isn't, I don't even know if that has green onion in it, but, garlic scapes, like I mentioned here, no one cooks with garlic scapes. Like that's just not, like no one does that in the South. Like it's not something that we use. And so it is interesting to highlight ingredients in their profiles and be able to pull, how those can mix and what they can do. Where are those? Because I haven't seen those resources yet, but is that something that you share in your newsletter right now? Or is that something that you said that you're developing to try to give those resources out to your customers?
We have on our site, we have an 8,000 word FODMAP 101 that we wrote with my personal dietitian and our advisor, Lauren Manning. And it's an awesome piece with different parts about how to cook with different things. And so that's up there. We have a bunch of recipes. We need a lot more. It takes a lot of time. It's easy to cook, but it's actually hard to make it look pretty and be easily reproducible by somebody else. So we want to grow that library. But if you sign up for our email, we send a huge series of educational content, because we want people to feel empowered and not like, I gotta it's like the worst thing ever. I've got to be on this method of eating, So I take that pretty seriously. And we try on social too to show good stuff. Either cooking, or we'll repost stuff that people have cooked using our stuff or other people's stuff, just good looking stuff,
Yeah. So developing recipes is way more challenging than you think it is. I don't enjoy it as a dietitian. I am not a recipe person. I throw my food together. It's never the same. Never the same. Like I mentioned I don't know how much of even the product I use. I just put it in and taste it and put some more in and mix them together. It's like, who knows? Like maybe it'll come out tasting a certain way or not. I don't know.
I know I do that, but I should have written down that version because I'll never be able to do it again.
Yeah. It's like you don't realize it. And I personally love spice blends for that reason, because it's like I don't have to think about for tacos, and I use all my different taco ones for that goes for tacos, that also goes for my chili, that also goes for this, it's like I use it for all sorts of things, because it's just so much easier to know that someone else put the thought into the blend and the how things pair together that I don't have to think about, and I can just put it in and add a little bit more if I want to. Whenever you're thinking about doing blends in the future, how are you going to be able to maintain the same quality of the ingredients? Is that going to be will you just source from similar farms? Is that process similar for those type of ingredients? And the ones I'm thinking about are I know there's chilies. Yeah. There are some interesting ingredients that can go into blends that are a little different in terms of how easily they freeze and stuff, right? Is there more complexity there?
Yeah. So we are not going to produce our own salts and peppers and chili powders. So we are working on some partnerships with other brands that we respect that are doing it the right way. They're also doing single origin sourcing from domestic or international farms, but they buy direct. I love the company Burlap and Barrel. They make just awesome spices. They directly buy from farms. There's no middleman and stuff sitting in a warehouse for a million years. So we plan to bring our unique spice to the table, like the onion and garlic powder, and then mix it with their cumin and coriander, whatever it might be, to make a blend. For example, that is up to the standards that we think are really important. I think that stuff's way more flavorful too, versus the more mass market sort of spices. So our idea is to blend with stuff that already exists, but the highest quality stuff we can find from a few different players. So I think I'm excited about those.
Yeah, that makes sense of like being able to pull the powders. And that's the issue with the powders that you have created, is that those powders didn't exist anywhere, right? So that was the main concern, is that garlic and onion did, but garlic scapes and all these other ones just didn't exist or exist at the quality that you wanted. And so you had to start there to then be able to use those to build.
Exactly.
Is that kind of how that works?
Exactly. Yeah. And we haven't been able to, we keep selling out of the main, like we have to have enough of the bases to make the blends.
Oh, yeah.
So, so we have to, it's a balance of like, we got to have enough so there's enough left over to then mix with other fun stuff to do, TBD what those blends would be. But taco's been on my list for a long, we already have it formulated. That's been on my list for a long time, because that seems like a very popular one. But even salt versions of our stuff, like some people just don't want to think about it. They just want to sprinkle the thing on there.
Yeah. Or like everything but the bagel. I feel like that's one that everyone wants an alternative for low FODMAPs. Like that doesn't work at all. Garlic and like onion. I think it's like dried onion. Like on everything bagels.
The everything spice. Yeah, I think that's an option too. I was thinking about like I don't know, but an oyster mushroom salt or something. If you need like an umami sort of blast. Oyster mushrooms are really hard to find. Places, and that could be kind of fun. So there's a lot of cool things we could do, I think.
That's so fun. That's interesting to think about, and that would be hard. Like, it's a fun space because there is a lot of creativity. It's just figuring out how to actually make it happen, and then also keeping things in stock is something you don't think about. And has that been impacted? I know with COVID and supply chain, and since you're working with such small farms, like, has that been an issue, or has that actually not been too big of a deal?
The farms actually have been really wonderful to work with. A lot of specialty farms grow for restaurants, and when restaurants had their dip, they had all this farmland, and we were able to sort of get in and do some pre-planning with them. I think was actually in our favor. But finding space in dehydration machines has been a little challenge, or our broth is packed in Tetra Pak, which is only printed in Hungary. The actual boxes are printed in Hungary, and they print fast, but they take 4 months to come on the boat, and we all know the ports are all jammed up. So we were before those packages. We have some early customers listening. We were in these weird pouches, thin pouches. And they were bursting in the mail. Oh my God, it was such a nightmare. And so we really fast had to get out of those. And we paid to airship a certain number just so we would have them, because we couldn't keep selling those. So now we're about to reorder for chicken broth and a beef broth. And if I order it today, we can't even put it in a box for 4 months, which is crazy. But, hopefully that starts to get better.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's like, we don't need things working against us for things that people need. And I know at the start of everything, there was the fear of, all these foods, the specialty foods that we buy, are going to disappear. And that didn't happen. I think things came out of all of that, but it is tough knowing that it just takes getting this package that's on, in the ocean somewhere to be able to then ship the products, which hopefully by the time that people are listening to this episode, there's a lot in stock to buy.
We need more. Our actual products are manufactured, but it's the packaging. Glass bottles are made in China. Tetra Pak's made in Europe. It's you got to wait for this stuff. It's unfortunate. We need more manufacturing here. I agree. Hopefully that'll grow. I don't know. In the South, it's interesting. I'm from Arkansas. So from a little food desert, it's just so interesting seeing things from other perspectives, being from, the area that I grew up. But I grew up in manufactured plant world. There's logging and plants of all sorts, and you see all these things that people buy, it's these big plants because there's so much land, in the South, and it's very rural. And so there's land, and, there's people who work, and the job security is good. And that's just kind of the way of life, is that you take up all this land and they put these big plants on it. And it's just out in the middle of nowhere. So it is interesting. I'm I wonder if we'll see that kind of increase because the need is high. And I'm surprised it hasn't, but I guess
the reason the need is high is because right now it's kind of hard to get those things going, but that's a different conversation.
And all of us as Americans, like as it is, we're paying probably like 50 cents for a glass bottle,
Yeah.
Here it'd be $1 glass. It's kind of sad. Yeah.
Yeah. Costs. Yeah. That makes a difference. And then by the time we get to the consumer, that's a big one. I think that's something that does come up often is, this whole idea of like, well, the cost of like specialty products is higher, right? And one reason is because, like you mentioned, you're working on a small scale. And I think I've experienced that on such a small level of ordering t-shirts, where it's, well, if I ordered 1,000 of these, like the cost per unit is so much smaller versus if I ordered 50 of these, but I can't like fund 1,000, so it's like, I can't buy that. So then you have to mark it up to then make it, where the cost of it is covered. And even with shipping, if you're shipping small things and small loads, like your price is not great compared to these people who are shipping in mass. They have better costs and margins and things to work from. But one thing that you mentioned is putting value on high quality ingredients that have a richer profile, which means that, if you have a powder, a blend or whatever, a broth even that has kind of a richer flavor profile, like you may actually need less of it than you would. I'd love to hear you speak to that a little bit, because I think that is something that, stands in the way sometimes where people don't want to buy, an alternative or a certain product. It's like, well, the price is higher. Why would I buy that if I could buy, maybe this more cheaply made product that doesn't have this quality in it? So as someone who created a product because of high quality profile, like if someone is getting into that world, like how would you explain that or talk about that? Or even like if you're talking to a friend, that's trying to explore that of using the product and getting the most value out of it, what would that look like?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Obviously I know we're not for everybody. That's why there's so many brands out there. I think, for the segment of the population that doesn't want to eat preservatives, really what it comes down to, you might find something that tastes like garlic, or you might find a broth that holds like a white label, like store brand broth without garlic or onion. But if you really look at the ingredients, do you want to eat? If you can't pronounce the thing, do you really want to eat that? And so we've made a decision that we're not going to do that. And it makes it more expensive. But I don't know, the last thing I want to do is I don't know, you're going to eat low FODMAP, but you're going to eat a product that maybe causes like your blood sugar to spike or like, exacerbates the diabetes epidemic we have in this country. Like, I think I want to be responsible to that first. I think having a really healthy product. So that's really important to me. And I don't know, on the broth side too, like a lot of like when you find like $1.99 broth at the store, right? You read it's like maybe with chicken fat, chicken powder, and like some concentrate X, Y, and Z, and maltodextrin and yeast extract. Yeast extract is a super cheap ingredient that has this like, it's not a preservative really, but sort of is. It's like, it just adds this fake salty flavor to it, versus getting it from bones and vegetables and things like that. So I think, that's a decision you have to make for yourself. But unfortunately, real ingredients are expensive. That's just what it is.
Yeah. And so it's like you could weigh those options in deciding what to buy. And
you can't do it then. Everybody can do it with everything. Maybe you choose to spend it here and not here. I don't know, for example.
No, I agree. I think products aren't as expensive as sometimes we think when we consciously think of how we use them. Of like, if you're buying green onions all the time, it's like, but you use this instead, there, I think some things that you can weigh out, or like if you're trying to work around it so much, or, if you find that you're never cooking because you don't like your food and you're eating out, which I see happen often, where it's like, no one wants to cook, or even I think knowing how to, like, educating yourself on how to cook. And that's something I had to learn early on, was that, I wasted a lot of money whenever I didn't know how to cook, because I didn't know how to use ingredients. I didn't know how to use food, in a way that would make it flavorful. And I don't know exactly what I'm saying there, but there's something to that I feel like is important to talk about, but it's a hard thing to get around, where it's like, I think there is a bit of like education of, it's not just about like, these seasonings that you use maybe as a kid, that you just douse everything in. But even I think what I'm getting is maybe experiencing and actually understanding flavor profiles. And an example is, we always talk about this with cheese with our clients of, high lactose versus low lactose. So if we're reducing cheese to be, within a lower lactose realm, whether it be mild, like medium lactose quantity cheeses, or even lactose free, when we choose like a fatty, like really good quality cheese, right? Like a really high quality aged cheddar, like nothing was been, it's got its fat in it. Like it's right where it's supposed to be. Like you eat a slice of that cheese and it's so much more satisfying than eating low fat skim cheddar cheese, right? And so then if we're thinking about the quantity you're using, it's like, let's say you're making a grilled cheese sandwich or something, you're going to use way less of this high quality flavorful cheese than what you're probably going to use of this like low fat, like not good quality cheese, because you're trying to get the flavor. I mean, you train yourself, and even with salt's that way, you use less of it when you start actually training your taste buds how to like feel and experience flavor. So I think that's where I was going.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about like our broth. There's, I'm gonna get ahead of myself, like with the food science thing, but there's something called the Brix level of liquids of broth, like the amount of dissolved solids in the thing. So most like cheap broth, most store broths you'll find will be like a 1 Brix or 2 Brix. Ours is a 5. So it's like you're saying, you can use a lot less of it. You're getting a lot more flavor, a lot more umami out of it. So you want to water it down, go ahead, water it down a little bit. You get it to do the 1 or 2 that most broths are at if you feel like doing that.
You can spread it out by just adding water.
Yeah, if you want to do that, I would never do that. But I mean, you're making a risotto, right? You could do a carton of broth and some water and some wine. You're good to go. It doesn't have to be 4 boxes of expensive broth. And we do, you're talking about cheese. Yeah, we do a great risotto that uses 3 different nice aged cheeses and the broth and the garlic escape powder. And you've got like a restaurant quality thing in a half hour. It's
better than buying like just hamburger helper. It's like maybe loaded with like cream, and it's like you can get flavors, knowing and just educating on why you're buying certain things and what they're being used for, versus like maybe the carrot. It's like your carrot might not be that different. I think obviously local carrots they taste better, but there are certain ingredients that aren't really that way, where it's like maybe a potato. It's like, it doesn't matter about where you're buying your potato. But other ingredients, like there are some differences, and there's also a difference in like the ripeness. And you hit on this where you said that you guys you freeze at like the peak ripeness to then be able to pull all the flavors. Is that what I understood from that for the dry?
So the garlic escape powder is the only one that goes through this like freeze drying process. We had actually, dehydration would be much easier, but freeze drying takes out more of the moisture actually, so it lasts a little longer. But more importantly, at a serving size, we found that dehydrating it for whatever scientific reason was still right on the line for FODMAP garlic escapes. So freeze drying gets you a little bit more volume wise for whatever crazy reason. Before it gets into the higher FODMAP range or higher fructans, which is good. The other 2 powders, the chive and the green onions, those get cut and like blanched for 30 seconds to get the dirt off and like kill anything. And then they go in a dehydration machine like all night long. Get the moisture back out, and then they get powdered down. So for the ones, garlic escapes are forgiving. Like you can pick them and they last a long time. So we do like, they're only available for a couple weeks. So we try to get everybody together. We get them in cold trucks. They get shipped to the freezer line. They go down the chutes like that week. Whereas the other 2 garlic chives die in like a second. So the team picks them in New Jersey like the day, and then early in the morning they get driven to the dehydrator. So they're like, and we deal with them right away.
That's so impressive. It's impressive to think about that of, what you're eating. Like it's not something that was, grown in like, another country and then driven for weeks and then put into a shelf and then get, it's like when you think about our food supply, it's like really thinking about like it's picked, cut, and dehydrated all within, the same day.
Yeah, some of these tricky ingredients. The scallion tops, those are more forgiving. We have a few more days on those, but the chives are rough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime you buy chives in the grocery store, it's like as soon as you get it home, we can only buy them in our store, in the little plastic thing. And it's like by the time I get it home, they're mushy. Like I can't even use it. Which is why I've loved getting to use the garlic chive powder and the garlic escape powder at home because I can get green onion stems and that's nice. I hate cutting them, so I'm all about the powders. It's like cutting actual garlic. I'm like trying to chop it to get all the juices, going. And
garlic chives are really hard to find unless you have like a cool Asian market near you. I mean, you're never gonna find the fresh ones in like Whole Foods even.
No.
So that makes those pretty unique.
Yeah, we hardly see them here at farmers markets either, and even like the good ones, like the ones, I see at the grocery store, like the little bitty, do you guys get some of like the bigger ones? Like, cause they can get pretty big. Right?
Oh, lengthwise? Yeah. The garlic chives are like the flat leaf version of the regular chive. And then depending on like early in the season, they're kind of short, but then if you let them go, like by the fall, they'll get a little longer. So we do a little better in our dry down ratios, like in the fall. Yeah.
It's interesting. Well, beyond, so more products like, spice blends, maybe whatever may come next. Like, do you guys have more in mind for Gourmend? Like, is there kind of a goal of where you guys are going or how you're involved in kind of the IBS low FODMAP space? Like anything happening within this year or next year?
Yeah, I think our goal is definitely to get some more products out there and explore retail as well this year, which I'm excited about. I think I mentioned, beef broth. People have been asking about for a long time. We're really close on that. And vegetable broth, very close as well, although it's a really complicated product to make. It requires so much fresh cutting of stuff. And because vegetables are way more expensive than meat bones, which is unfortunate. So, working through that. And, we're excited to hopefully partner with more brands this year and do some fun stuff. And we've launched a dietitian program, so we want to get a lot of samples out to you and your colleagues and your clients and patients, and talking to our customers. I love it. People call on the phone or they want like cooking advice, and we're always happy to do that kind of stuff. So, awesome. And I think we're probably going to end up raising a serious funding round so we can really keep this going in a really strong way. So, yeah.
That's so exciting. And I talked with earlier in the season, Katie, who was the founder of Belly Welly. I don't know if you've connected with that.
We just talked the other day.
Okay, yeah. We talked about fundraising and how all of the investors that got on board for her team, like, were invested, right? Because they have IBS or someone they know has IBS, or, just seeing how companies are so closely knit of people who are in the space too, of like, I've been through it, or I know the problem, and, excited to solve the problem, not just about how we can mass produce this to make money or how we can do, it's like not just about that, but about really providing high quality, products and solve a real problem that's out there that people are experiencing, which you don't see. And in a lot of companies, you think about like Shark Tank and, investors at that level where it's like, I think that they care a little bit, but they care about the bottom line more than anything versus, and always about like, how do we cut, right? How do we break costs out? How do we do this? How do we do that?
Right.
And so it is interesting to see that. So hopefully you have that same experience of.
Yeah, we've held off on that for the time being, because I was worried about that. Certain investors will want you to like change the mission in a certain way for certain, I don't know if this is the business to go into if you have dreams of making tons of money. We really started to help people, and if we have investors, they have to be people that are willing to come along for the ride on high quality stuff. And I'd like us to become a big corporation, which is a corporation that's really invested in, not just at the bottom line, but all the stakeholders, the planet, employees, all these customers, and all this sort of stuff. So, exciting stuff, I think.
That's really exciting. And where can people find you now? So I know your website, they can buy from you directly there, correct?
Yeah, gourmendfoods.com. We're on Amazon as well, although the products go in and out on Amazon, just depending on how much we have left at the given time. But right now, everything's on Amazon. Although you'll get a better deal by buying straight from us. But Amazon's been good for getting the word out who just people don't know about these things. So it's a good discovery place for people too. And then
if they buy from you, they get on your email list, so they'll actually get the tips in the cooking.
They get
so
the
it's
tips,
a little bit better,
stuff. Yeah, and then we have like special bundles and discounts. You get more stuff, and and be part of the fun.
Yeah, it's all about being in community. Well, that's awesome. So I'll link all of that. I'll link that resource you mentioned, the low FODMAP resource on your website. I can link that in our show notes, as well as where people can check out your products and buy. But is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else about Gourmend or your product or low FODMAP, being someone who's in this gut issue world that started a business, which is a feat. Like that's not always the easiest thing. So anything else that you want to share?
I mean, I'm an open book. So if there's any of your listeners want to know more, or they want to talk about how to cook this stuff, or I'll get on video with people. I'm here for anybody who just wants, because I know what it's like to go through it. And, I think I want our brand to be here to really help people. And so, if you email, usually it's going to be me writing it back, which is fun. So feel free.
That's fun. And is connecting through Instagram a great way for people to kind of get in touch as well?
Yeah, Instagram's great as well. Absolutely. Yep. At Gourmend Foods. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ketan. I really enjoyed it. It's nice to see behind the curtain a bit of food production and talking through some of these things. So thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me on, Erin. Super fun.